back here. So let's take a seat. It's past 2 o'clock already. I know that some people are rushing back from their lunches. It's quite a long walk, from Harbour Road side all the way here. So we will start sort of slowly by me introducing the session, and then we'll ask the speakers to speak one by one. So I have 2 roles today. I am the facilitator as well as speaker, because after the 2 speakers talk about what they do, I would like to give you an overview of the arts funding landscape and ecosystem in Hong Kong. And I didn't know that Mr. Chang is there, Sunman is there, my good friend, who is now teaching at Education University. I think he should be actually a much better speaker. So next year, if we touch on this subject again, arts and culture, impact funding, I will definitely ask someone to do this instead of me. So welcome to this session. I think most of you know our system already. If you, if you would like to get simultaneously translation, please please go to the counter out there and get a headset. The English channel is 1, the Putonghua channel is 2, and the Cantonese channel is 3. So, do you need a headset, or you have your headset? Is everything okay on that front? So, who is here for the first time since yesterday, or have you been here yesterday as well? You have been here yesterday, all right? So I need not introduce the Social Enterprise Summit because you know what it is. What is interesting is that this year, the organizing committee has done a lot of, thinking, and we would like to do more cross-sector dialogues. In the past, we focused on social enterprises on their own, and of course, there are lots of topics to cover. But nowadays, if we want to talk about well-being, sustainability, these bigger topics, we need to look at what different sectors are doing. So for this particular session, we will be focusing on arts and culture and how we could enhance different funding models, how we could nurture talents who can both strive for artistic excellence, because that is first and foremost, most important thing, is to thrive for excellence. But the second is, how could they make impact in society? For impact, I mean social impact. So you might be thinking, oh, do you mean that we should bring the orchestra, the Hong Kong Philharmonic to the schools more? Now, that is one program that might make an impact, or it might not make a big impact. It depends on how this whole thing is set up. But I think making an impact is a very, very big topic, and I'm so glad that we have got 2 speakers here to inspire us. And so very quickly, I want to see whether Selena, you are online. If so, could our team, our production team, could you show her face? We have 2 speakers from overseas. One is here with us, and I'll introduce him so shortly. And now we have Selena Nerotti, who is in Italy. Are you in Venice, Selena, or in Milan?
No, I'm in Torino, where I live.
Are you in Torino? Yes. We have asked you to wake up and get ready at a very uncivilized time. I must admit. It is 7 a.m. in Torino, Italy, but you look very fresh. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us. And well, it's a pity that you can't fly to Hong Kong to be with us, but later on, Sabina will talk about the Biennale College. How she has nurtured emerging filmmakers in the last 10, 12 years with this very, very meaningful initiative. So thank you, Selena. We will ask Stephen Phillips to speak first, and then over to you, all right? So if you can make her face a bit smaller so that she's not under pressure. Okay, so without further ado, we have 3 speakers for this session. We have Siva Phillips from the UK, we have Sabina Narotti from Italy, and then you have me as a local correspondent, Ada. And let me introduce Siva. Well, actually his title is right there, Head of Arts and Culture Investments, Nesta UK. So for people who don't know what Nesta is, in the old days, very old days, Nesta has a long name. It's called National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts. Used to be an acronym, but now you don't think it's an acronym anymore. They just call it Nesta, and Nesta is the UK's innovation agency. They innovate everything, not just social innovation, but Siva will talk to you about funding and how, since 2015 at Nesta, they have evolved to encourage arts practitioners and creative people to make an impact in society with loans, with grants, and with a lot of support. And I have talked to him yesterday, and I think what he will tell you is very fascinating. So yes, let's ask Siva now then to give his talk. Could everybody of you give him a big round of applause? The microphone is there, and now we're sitting there watching you. All right.
Hi everyone, can everybody hear me? Great. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be at the Social Enterprise Summit and a real privilege to be in Hong Kong. It's my first time in this great city, so I'm really grateful to be here and be able to speak with you today. So, Ada, thank you so much for the introduction. As Ada mentioned, I'm the Head of Arts and Culture Investments at Nesta, the UK's innovation agency. I head up the Arts and Culture Finance team, which provides impact investment to arts and culture social enterprise. And so today I want to achieve three things. First of all, tell you about impact investment and what that means. Explain how it works in the context of cultural social enterprise. And thirdly, hope to inspire you to get involved either in impact investment or supporting cultural social enterprise, or both, I dare say. So a bit of background, Nesta is an innovation agency. It's very broad, it does a lot of different things in the creative economy, in government innovation, in supporting people to lead healthier lives, and trying to develop innovations around creating a more sustainable future environmentally for the planet. It's got a history of supporting creative social enterprises. I use creative and cultural social enterprises interchangeably. And it's done so in the past using grants, so running grant programs like the Digital R&D Fund, which is all about supporting technological research and development in the cultural sector to help it achieve impact. But since 2015, it has been incubating arts and culture finance, which is an innovative form of funding for the cultural sector, whereby we provide repayable finance or impact investment to cultural social enterprises. So I'm going to talk a bit about that and about our work there. Before getting started, I thought it would be useful to explain what I mean by repayable finance and social impact investment. So repayable finance is a very broad term that I use to call any funding that you have to pay back. So it's very different to a grant. Social impact investment is the subset of repayable finance. It's the provision of finance, typically a loan, although it might also include equity investment, for a social as well as a financial return. So sometimes that implies a trade-off between the social and the financial. Other times there is no trade-off and you can get both social and financial returns. I think it can be quite a flexible funding tool. So unlike project-based grants, it generally can be used for all range of purposes. I'll talk about some of those later, but just to give you a hint of that now. The key thing is that the investment can be repaid. So understanding the risks for investors, as well as the impact, is a crucial part of the process. So that was kind of an overview of impact investment. And before going further, I wanted to talk about the context for the cultural sector in the UK. I don't think actually it's too dissimilar from what I understand from Ada about the Hong Kong context. Essentially, the cultural sector has been traditionally grant funded for many years. Some organizations have developed quite sophisticated trading models, but many have not. Yet at the same time, for many arts organizations, there is the possibility, the capability to generate their own income. So obviously through ticket sales and box office income, but also through ancillary business models that sit alongside kind of the core offer. So for example, food and beverage, maybe consulting services, maybe the rental of space in their buildings, as well as IP-related activities, so licensing IP, for example. At the same time, it's a sector that faces kind of decreasing availability of funding. So more and more organizations are competing for an ever-shrinking funding pie, as it were. Social need is growing. We have a growing population and many social challenges in the UK, which arts and cultural organizations are meeting, but they need to fundraise to meet those challenges. So it's a very competitive environment. And so organizations are quite interested in how they become more financially resilient, more stable, and more self-sustaining. Social investment until sort of 2015 in the cultural sector was a very small activity. I think organizations were put off by essentially embodying a grant funding mentality. There's also maybe a lack of confidence around what it means to take on investment, and the ability to prepare the right kind of financial forecasts and the right financial models that might satisfy investors. There's also some challenges around articulating their social impact to the satisfaction of investors, and for many organizations also a lack of assets that might serve as collateral for investors. So those are some of the barriers. I joined Nesta in 2015 with my colleague Fran, and we joined basically to set up the Arts Impact Fund, which had been fundraised successfully and brought together by a consortium of different arts funders, a public funder, the Arts Council of England, which is the main public funder of the arts in the UK, as well as a private bank, Bank of America, and it was convened by central government, and kind of really as an intervention that's designed to test whether impact investment can work in the cultural sector. So really, it's there to test the idea that you can, that there's demand for impact investment in the sector, as well as the ability to repay it. Since then, we've raised a couple of other funds. The Cultural Impact Development Fund, which is a smaller scale fund, and the Arts and Culture Impact Fund, which is a bigger version of the very first fund, and we launched that right before the COVID pandemic, so it was great timing. Our launch event was the last event that we could attend in person before everybody had to go indoors for about a year. We decided to launch more funds to respond to, I think, a growing demand for this kind of finance. We commissioned some market research, which is quite crucial in helping us understand what organizations wanted. And we found that there was an estimated demand of about £300 million per year over a 5-year period. This was in 2018. Oh, and obviously, press back. All of those names are very confusing. They're all very similar. That's why we rebranded as Arts and Culture Finance. That's our brand, sector-facing brand, to make it easier for organizations to understand. So these are our funds at a glance. We'll just leave that there for you to digest the information. As you can see, this is the investment period, but we're still getting the funds repaid because the investments are made for typically a 5-year period, in some cases longer. So we're still waiting for those funds to be paid back. In our first fund, about 50% of the investment has been repaid to date. You'll also notice from the investors, what's interesting about all of these funds is that there are a mix of public, private, and philanthropic funders. And I think what's particularly innovative is that they use repayable grants from the public funders, so from Arts Council in England, to leverage in additional private money into those funds by means of loans. So effectively, the repayable grants de-risk the private investment into the funds. And actually, as time has gone on through these funds, we've managed to increase the ratio of private funding to grant funding from 1.3 in the Arts Impact Fund to 3 times the grant in the Arts and Culture Impact Fund. In fact, it's a £20 million fund, and 5 million of it is grant, so there's significant additional crowding in of money into that. We've supported over 50 organisations since 2015, and to date we have a write-off rate of 3.4% of the deployed capital, which I think is pretty good going so far. I'm already running up against time, so perhaps Ada, we can talk a lot about some of the case studies in the Q&A. On this slide, I just wanted to illustrate where we're positioned on the spectrum of capital available. So on the very left, you've got very traditional type of investment, which doesn't really care about the social impact, and all it's there to do is to maximize financial return. On the other side, you have philanthropic capital, which incurs 100% financial loss because you're giving it away, but yet it's all about achieving impact. And we sit somewhere kind of to the right of this, where we expect the money back, but we definitely want to achieve a clear social return. And this makes it a bit more intentional than ESG investing, which is generally about negative screening, so making sure that your money doesn't have a negative impact, but it doesn't really mind so much what the positive impact might be. On this slide, just to kind of reiterate that impact investment from our funds can be used for a wide variety of purposes. So it might be to employ new staff, to invest in infrastructure like IT systems, like minibus, for example, invest in marketing and growing the business. It might be used to buy a building or to renovate and refurbish an existing building and make it more impactful, make it more commercially viable. A typical question that I get asked a lot from people unfamiliar with impact investment in the space is how are organizations meant to repay it? The obvious answer is that sometimes organizations have reserves that they can call upon to repay the investment, so those are the reserves built up over time through profits and surpluses. Then obviously profits from trading activities, so we need to ensure that organizations can indeed trade, and ideally they earn their revenue from a wide variety of sources. They might also receive funding that's paid in arrears, so they might take on funding or investment from us to provide cash flow, upfront cash, that they will be repaid from in the future. So, for example, they might receive a grant that's payable in arrears, but they need to do the work right now. So they take a loan from us, do the work, and then we're repaid from that grant in the future. And finally, they might be refinancing their loan. So they might borrow new money to refinance ours. What are the advantages? Well, I think relative to grants, social investment can be a much more flexible tool. I think from a sector point of view, that idea of leverage, the grants being used to crowd in new money, has a significant advantage of bringing new cash into the sector. For funders, it means that the money can be returned. And if you're a philanthropic funder or a grant maker traditionally, then that means that you can either re-grant or continue reinvesting that money for additional social benefit. I think there's also something about the investment relationship being different to a grant funding relationship. It's typically longer term. So a grant is typically awarded over a 1 year period, maybe a maximum of a 3 year period, whereas an investment relationship is longer, so typically 5 to 6 years. And over that time, because the investee needs to pay back the money, it allows you to develop a closer working relationship with them. And perhaps you, as the investor, using your kind of leverage of money and the fact that organizations have to report to you and they're under an obligation to report to you, you can try to achieve other objectives, for example, around impact. So you might make the achievement of certain social impact targets a condition of the loan in ways that you might not be able to do as a grant maker. But once your money is gone, that's it. There's very little recourse. The investment might lead to improved financial resilience for the borrowers, typically because it allows them to invest in their business capabilities. We've seen evidence of that in our portfolio. And certainly in the UK, we're now in a sort of slightly challenging economic environment where interest rates are rising and so our capital is seen to be considerably cheaper. There are obviously some risks, and particularly for organizations, it means that if you can't repay the investment, in the worst case scenario, this might lead to insolvency. It might lead to the investor folding the organization, making it close to recover the value of their investment. We haven't actually had to do that in any of our cases. We're trying to encourage a collaborative relationship with all of our borrowers, but that is a risk for organizations to consider. There's also initially a significant time commitment for borrowers, so they need to be patient with us as investors as we conduct our due diligence and research into those organizations. I'm going to make a stop there. I think I'm mostly at the end of the presentation. I can talk a bit about what we look for in organizations in the Q&A, but yeah, I'm going to draw this to a close. Well, we can talk about it in the Q&A perhaps. There's some case studies as well. Lastly, I think I wanted to draw attention to a report that our team is currently in the process of publishing at the end of this month. This report will feature, it's aimed at a global audience, and it's all about showcasing our work and helping build a case for more impact investment in the cultural sector. We're launching it at the end of this month, and we'll be hosting webinars aimed at a global audience. So if you'd like to take part and come to the webinar and receive an advance copy of the report, please email me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So please take a seat first.
Great.
And so we should have a longer Q&A session. I hope that you can all join in for a very fruitful conversation. If you want to listen to Selena, you might want to sit there or you can sit there. So next, we invite our speaker from Italy, Selena Narotti, to share her thoughts with us. Hello, Selena. Hello again. We have like 60 plus people in this room. We can all wave to you. Hi. Thank you for doing this from Torino. And I spoke with Steve Phillips just now, and you can do 10 to 15 minutes if you need a few minutes longer. So, okay? So I know that you might have a video to show us, and also you're sharing. And thank you very much. No video?
No video, so
Okay.
it will be just me.
Okay, no problem. So over to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you and good afternoon. It's morning for me, but I know that it is early afternoon. Let me start by saying a little bit about La Biennale di Venezia, what the Biennale is. Well, the Biennale is one of the first European organizations, cultural organizations that have worked across all of the art fields. It was founded in 1895, so it's 130 years old, and it started in 1895 with an art biennale. And the idea in the beginning was, of course, to showcase all the best in different fields. At the moment, the Biennale di Venezia has an art biennale, an architecture biennale, dance, music, and theater biennials, and what we are here to talk about, the Venice International Film Festival. That is the oldest film festival in the world and runs in September. 12 years ago, the Biennale, with its president, Paolo Baratta, decided that apart from holding these huge biennials that would showcase works of arts from all over the world, it was important to have a program and that would help emerging artists to not only show their work, but actually to produce it. It was a very big, significant change, and They didn't know exactly how this could be done, but that's where we started working, because that is my background. I am a person that has developed different projects in the film world for training, development, and funding. And so in 2012, we launched the Biennale College Cinema. And the Biennale College Cinema is a program that allows filmmakers to be selected, join, and in the space of less than a year, come from an idea, a concept of low-budget feature films, to not only producing the film, shooting the film, but also showcasing it at the Venice Film Festival. So it is a very intense program that combines training and funding and exhibition, let's say, world premiere at the Venice International Film Festival. How did this happen? What was the situation, and is still now the situation, I would say, definitely in Europe? We would see filmmakers, young filmmakers, or at least filmmakers that wanted to have their first or second feature film done, having to raise an amount of money that nobody was really wanting to give them. It was heavily relying on public funding that was decreasing. How would you say? We normally, at the time, and also today in a way, to co-produce a first feature would take around 800 to 1 million to 1.5 million euros, and it was very difficult to see this investment for first and second feature films. So what would happen is that we would have filmmakers that were shooting short films for a long period of time and could come to their first feature way in their 40s. Apart that this is always possible, so we are not age-based, but of course this would create sometimes, in case also of some projects, to raise funding to shoot a feature film would take from the minimum of 4 years to a maximum of also 7-8 years. And this created a huge frustration because, as you can imagine, a film, as any work of art, has an urgency tied to it. And that is also one of the most important elements of unique and artistic filmmaking. It has to say something about the world we live in. And to sit there and have an idea and wait for years until it is fully financed is not, let's say, the best of the situations. So the idea came from seeing how in the United States at the time there were some websites, some organizations that were shooting very low, were allowing people to raise very low sums. In this case, let's say at the time it was 150,000 euros or dollars at the time in the UK, and they were actually shooting a full feature. And when I saw this happening, I don't know if you're aware that the platform Kickstarter in those years was actually used to raise a lot of, quite a few films were done through that platform. Also author-driven films, also Charlie Kaufman, for example, wrote a film that was fundraised also through that platform. But in any case, I would see in the United States that there was a lot of work around low-budget filmmaking that also had a highly artistic value, because low budget was not considered as something that just reduces the cost, of course, but as an aesthetic parameter to actually choose some how would you say, some limitations that would actually increase creativity. And I saw that this was possible to fund through La Biennale di Venezia, and that this was possible to fund also for filmmakers and producers from all over the world. And so here we come to the model that is still running now after 12 years and through which we have actually funded 37 first feature films directly, but another 38 have been then independently produced on a low budget, but have been developed and incubated through the Biennale College Center. The model is quite simple. We launch a call for ideas, and it is a quite complex call that is launched each year in May. And it's open to teams of directors and producers from all over the world. And in the call, what you have to tell us is to give us a treatment, so we do not need and do not want a full script. We need you to have a quite developed idea based on a budget of 200,000 euros, and we need you to tell us how you think that you could shoot this film in the space of 1 year, and for less than 1 year. But we need to understand a little bit why this idea is low budget, how it could be developed, and why do you think, why does the filmmaker and the producer think that this is an important film to be made? And the application ends in July. We select 12 teams, and we invite them to come to Venice for 12 days in the month of October, and together with experts from different countries in different fields of filmmaking, directors, story editors, screenwriters, we help the teams intensively to develop their ideas on the basis of, again, a film that needs to be shot with 200,000 euros and in a very short period of time. In this, we try to support them in every way. It is also a way to allow time to the teams to work together. We are actually on the island of San Servolo, that is a very small island just in front of San Marco, 10 minutes with a vaporetto, that is the water ferry, 10 minutes distant from San Marco, but we are actually isolated in this island. That was a mental asylum in the very far past. But it's a beautiful island where we stay for 12 days and we develop these 12 ideas. At the end of this process, we need to choose, the filmmakers and the producers need to work together. This is another very important element of this program. We believe that that film that will be owned by them, we do not ask anything from La Biennale except the premiere in the Venice Film Festival, where we support the filmmaker, and all the success of the film then is for the team. But we need them to share the success. We need them to be considered both the authors of the film. So it is very important that the team works, and we believe in the team of director and creative producer. So after the 12-day workshop, they go off and they have 4 weeks, a month to write a first draft based on all the comments and all that they received. At that point, we select 4 projects, and we grant them 200,000 euros each. And the teams do come back to Venice, those 4 teams, for another 2 workshops, one in December and one in January. One is actually online in January, it's more a pre-production. And then we follow with an editor and with the different experts while they go off in their countries, shoot the film, and come to show us a first cut by more or less June, so that we can also give feedback on the first cut, and before they lock picture, we will have seen the films 2 times, and then ready they go to end post-production and to be in the official selection of the Venice International Film Festival in August. So this is more or less the trajectory. I can answer, of course, all the questions for people that are interested in how this works. The only thing that I want to say that is important for us is that we work not to make one film that resembles the other. We do not have any model at the Biennale College. We want to sort of help the team of filmmakers to really reach out with their voice, with their unique stories. At the moment, of the 75 films that have been produced, also if not fully financed through the Biennale College, we have films from 48 countries. And if you want to know more, of course, I am here for questions and for the discussion, but also there is a book that is called 10, in Italian it means 10, that celebrates the 10th year of the Biennale College that we just celebrated last year. And this book is online on the website of the Biennale di Venezia, and it tells the whole story of what has happened in these 10 years of the program. What else can I do? The filmmakers can just be selected. We have every year around 300 applications from all over the world. And of the 4 films that are or 4 projects that are selected at the end, one is Italian, the other 3 can come from any country. But among the 4, we also fund, support with the grant, 2 films that are directed by women filmmakers. So among the 4, we have 1 Italian and 2 women directors. I think that I have given you a general overview of what we are doing, and I will be really happy to answer questions more specific. And I don't know if Ada, you have any now to ask me, or
just out of curiosity, Sabina, have you come across Hong Kong filmmakers in your program?
We do not have yet Hong Kong films, but we are really looking forward to welcome them.
Wonderful. That's very good news for us. So thank you very much. Please give Sabina a big round of applause. So it's my turn now. Can somebody change these slides? I put down this. Right, so I was jotting down some notes. So when Siva spoke about Arts Impact Fund, I think what really struck me was that he mentioned that the art group's mentality changed from a grant mentality, a program level mentality, to something more long-term and something more at the organizational level. And he will think about how to develop the organization. So that really, touched me a lot. And then one thing he also said was that art and culture could really contribute to solutions. So solutions in society, in bringing more well-being. This year our theme is well-being, bringing more well-being to our community, and also to improve resilience, financial resilience. So I think to me, I have been in this ecosystem for a long time. This mentality is lacking. So I think we need to discuss this a little bit after my very quick talk. Now, for Sabina, what I really like is the process. Actually, the funding is not terribly a loss. Sabina, you will hear what I'm going to say. In Hong Kong, we have first feature film grants, and it's like 5 million Hong Kong dollars and 8 million Hong Kong dollars. So it is much more than the Biennale College. But what we don't have, I guess, is that we don't get the young people together. They have to come together for 12 days, 12 teams, and then they learn from each other. They build capacity. So this is what I think is very important. They go to workshops, and then they meet very seasoned and senior directors and the people in the film industry, and they learn and they grow. So I think this is also an aspect that we should think about in nurturing, in building capacity for our art groups and artists. For me, I would like to give you a very broad overview of funding in the arts in Hong Kong. The first thing I would like to say is that we actually have quite a bit of funding. Now, some of you might not believe me, and I recognize some faces here. And also, there's an alumna of the School of Creativity here, and she's really in the field. But people actually don't know that there is so much funding. So in the first few slides, I just have 10 slides around that. I'm going to just show you. So the Hong Kong Arts Development Council has lots of different schemes and project grants and etc. So you can see that there's an emerging artist development grant, there's an arts talents internship, there's a young arts tech talents scheme, and there's a whole big load of programs. And you can, if you know about this, you can enroll. If you want to go overseas for a cultural internship, you can also enroll and you get selected. But the amount is not very big, but it benefits lots of people. And I think in recent years, the Arts Development Council has come up with more of these very specific funding in nurturing, which is a good sign. But still, it is a small grant because their cake is actually very small as compared to the other government bodies that I'm going to talk about. Then there's Create Hong Kong. It used to be with the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau. It focuses on the creative industries. So you see all these icons. You see the BODW, which is the Business of Design Week, which is held in December every year. And then there's the Design Incubation Program for young emerging designers, and they are given offices as well. There's this comic support scheme for artists, for comic artists. DFA is the Design for Asia Award, which is actually a very big award for all designers in Asia. And then you have DigiEd Publish, which is for the advertising industry. And Next Writers, this is also a publishing kind of award. Institute of Design Knowledge is part of the Hong Kong Design Center, but it is about disseminating interesting ideas in design, designing for sustainability, designing for well-being, that sort of theme. And then there's a Hong Kong Smart Design Awards. And just recently, our chief executive announced in his policy address that a total of, it's a huge sum, 4.3 billion Hong Kong dollars, to both the Create Smart Initiative under Create Hong Kong and also to the Film Development Fund to provide incentives now, and also to provide private sector capital and expanding new markets. So this is something that is interesting. Maybe there will be more matching, there will be more public-private collaboration. And also, Create Hong Kong will be moved one notch up to become a more holistic cultural and creative industries development agency. Now, this has only been announced, we don't know any details yet, but I think that it is a right way forward. Then we have the Hong Kong Film Development Council, and Serena, look at these figures. So here I want to focus on the FFFI, which is the First Feature Film Initiative. There are two groups. The Higher Education Institution group, which means that you're still in film school, like the APA Film School, HKDI, etc. And there's the professional groups, young professionals in filmmaking, $8 million. For students, 5 million Hong Kong dollars, which is like more than 500,000 euros. The amounts will increase because of the enhanced funding under the policy address. Now, this FFFI has been very, very important, and for all these first feature films that we have witnessed in the last 2 years. First of all, you see, you might recognize some of these films, and you might have watched them yourselves. They have all benefited from the FFFI. And I have been talking to a number of the younger filmmakers. They think that this is like their first step, to get this funding, to get their first feature film. And these young filmmakers are around, 30 years old, and not the 14 years old that Sabina just talked about, because, the market is very small in Europe and might need a long time to get funding to raise funds for the first feature film. So, 落花流水, 過時過節, all these are supported by the Film Development Council. So next, in the policy address, in addition to this new agency for culture and creative industries, our chief executive said that More money will be poured into performing arts program scheme, about 10 million cap and additional 5 million fund to match private sector funding. There will be increased provision for cultural exchange from 50 million to 70 million to support more art groups to take part in cultural activities outside of Hong Kong, so in mainland China and also the rest of the world. They will have to reignite the Hong Kong Fashion Design Week so that our fashion designers and our local textile and design brands can go abroad and attract buyers. And we now have a Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau since last year. Now I clicked this because this is actually the view of a lot of the practitioners in Hong Kong, because the Bureau has been in place now for over a year, but we haven't seen any new policies yet. But we now have, actually, because of the policy address. But before, they actually amalgamated a lot of the different branches of government. So the Create Hong Kong came under this new bureau, and also LCSD came under the bureau, etc. And tourism is also under the same bureau. But what the bureau also has, it also has a funding scheme. It's very, very strange. Normally, policy bureaus are in charge of policies, but there's this ACDFS, which is the Arts Capacity Development Funding Scheme, and this aims to build cultural software and builds the capacity of the art sector. It is actually most welcomed by a lot of art groups because they can propose something very innovative for them. And I've highlighted 4 examples, which I won't read out, but like Asia Art Archive, they wanted to do this exhibition called Recording Disappearance, and they can get funding from the ACDFS. So that is the sort of art side, the hardcore art side. Now, since we're at the Social Enterprise Summit, I want to highlight a number of funding under the SIE fund and also the other funding. So SIE stands for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fund. It is under another bureau. It's not under the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau. It is under Innovation, Technology and Industry Bureau. Now, for SIE fund, it has supported many innovative programs in the last 7-8 years. And it has shown impact, that these programs have impacted different, I would say, different disadvantaged sectors in Hong Kong. And it is also a support for startups in Hong Kong, in particular for social startups. And I see Elsie here because she is the host of the biggest social enterprise challenge in Hong Kong, to encourage youngsters to come up with different ideas and to incubate their social startup. So this has been very successful, and the SIE fund is actually the nurturing ground for social startups in Hong Kong. But I have found that very interestingly, many of the initiatives are crossovers of art and culture and education. So they use art and culture as a tool, as the means, as the channel to enlighten, to empower, and to actually create a platform for these very much neglected people. So including these, Art Morala and Blaine, they're the same company actually. They ask youngsters, rehab youth, to do mural painting, like street art. And then we have Art of Empowerment as teacher assistants in art classes. Busy Bee offers free art activities for art exploration and creative thinking, for disadvantaged youth. Startup Wonders, offer services for people who have art products, but they have intellectual disabilities. So all these want to create impact, but they use art to create that impact. But how do you merge the two? I'm quite sure the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau doesn't know about this. But how do we tell them and discuss more crossover? So another funding under Home Affairs Department funding for social enterprise, that's the Enhancing Self-Reliance Scheme. But again, in recent years, there are lots of initiatives supported by HAD, which are culture related. including one that supports independent musicians to perform and to do recordings, supporting South Asian people to perform, to dance, and supporting older folks, the elderly, to tell their stories and use it in cultural tourism. And then, to do STEM and STEAM making, design and technology stuff in the last one. So these are actually related to arts and culture and creative industries as well. But again, this is not supported by the Culture Bureau, but by other bureaus. Now, there's another commission called the Tourism Commission. It is now under the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau, but it is sort of fairly independent in its funding, and it has got some not small funding. It has supported festivals all over Hong Kong. The best known recent one is the Sai Kung one, the Sai Kung Festival, Sai Kung Hoi, right? And also a brand called DDHK, started in Sham Shui Po and also in Shun Wan. So all these design related, but all of these are short term. So these are my thoughts now. Government led, right? A tripartite. By tripartite, I mean government, business, and civil society, non-profits, working together. The funding is sizable, but it's project focused, it's finite. So I always think that the projects all have an end date. So when you have an end date, you finish the funding, you give a report to the authority who gave you the money, and sort of that's it. That's sort of the end of the initiative. So I think the various authorities might need to review and integrate and make more natural connections so that we encourage artistic excellence and also social impact at the same time. And how to think about sustainability, how to think about not just being program-based. So this is my final slides. So we need to cross more boundaries, we need to build a sustainable practice for creative practitioners, and we need to nurture cultural entrepreneurs. And I'm very serious about this. I think, artists should not rely on government totally. They should think about how to be entrepreneurs. And the cultural system will only grow if we are more entrepreneurial and innovative in our work. And funding the support for meaningful initiatives should be geared towards this goal. So thank you very much. Can I invite Steve on stage? You want to take that seat? And also, we'll beam Selena on again. All right. I'm not sure whether I should do this to the two speakers, but I would like them to actually think about what they do and how they could help us, after listening to what I just said. Siva first, you heard what I said. Hong Kong actually has lots of money, and the government is committed to developing arts and culture because it is written in our 14th five-year plan of the whole country, of the whole of China, that Hong Kong should be an East meets West center for arts and culture in the whole of China. We've got lots of small funding. How do you see that? Is it similar in the UK, or would you like to make a suggestion of how Hong Kong could move forward?
Sure, thank you. Well, it's really good to see that there's so many different initiatives happening. I'm not really sure how that compares to the UK. I think I'm not up to speed with all of the grants that are constantly available. But I think what would be interesting to see is how some of those grants can be repurposed to essentially be repayable grants that can be used to leverage in additional private capital into the sector, be that through private grants or through loans. So the kind of blended model that I was talking about in our case. Something that I was talking to someone last night about actually was, it's surprising how we talk a lot about sustainability and the importance of that for organizations, because by being sustainable, organizations are freer to do what they want to do. And I think most funders and most policymakers understand that and are on board with that. And yet they keep providing funding that's very project-based. I think what might be interesting, and I haven't actually seen this happen in the UK much, so I think it's relevant to all contexts, is what about some grant funding that has the explicit aim of making organizations more sustainable. So if an organization could fund its CEO or senior leadership team for a year to go away and think about how can we generate our own revenue, by the output by the end of the year is a clear business plan that doesn't have any grants in it. That's an extreme, perhaps, model, but something that pays for time for people to carve out their own sustainability.
So it's like a sabbatical concept. They go away, they visit like-minded organizations, they travel around the world to learn.
Yeah.
Right?
That'd be great.
Yeah, that sounds good, right? I see some people smiling. Okay, any other thoughts before I turn to Sabina?
No.
Okay. Hello, Sabina, you're there. So, what do you think about giving Hong Kong some advice after what I just said? I hope you heard me clearly just now.
No, I heard you very clearly. You actually said that you do not have enough workshops and building capacity around the funds. The success of the Biennale College is actually that it is considered a place where you come out with a lot of experience, and it is very different from going to college or university. It is not that. You know already you are a filmmaker, but every idea needs time and needs input and needs to be questioned. And this is what we offer at the Biennale College. So it's really space and time for filmmakers, in this case from all over the world, but it doesn't have to be like that, but to really exchange and develop together. So in fact, people do apply to the Biennale College because they are, of course, attracted to the 200,000 euros and showing their film at the Venice Film Festival, but you need to buy into the process, and the process is a deep learning process. And whatever the skills that you acquire in being for a year in this environment with all these other filmmakers around you and experts, and that are not trying to teach you there is one way to do things, but that are challenging your idea and that are helping you to think it through, it is actually a way to create a method, an inner also method of how to develop ideas. And
Could I ask you what happens in the 12 days? Because you mentioned that you select 12 teams and they are together in 12 days. So, what happens actually? Or do you have workshops with them, or you just create conversation tables?
No, we have workshops. We have all kinds of activity. It is very structured. It is very intense. We have a combination of group sessions, one-to-one sessions, pitching sessions, but they are as a development tool. So we do present this work in progress, this script in progress, let's call it like that, at the end of these workshops to the Biennale, but it is not intended, of course, to raise any funding. It is intended to highlight what the work has been in the week and in the 10 days and how the project can move forward. So the idea, so we have different experts coming together. Let's say we have a script advisor, what we call a script tutor, a producer tutor, and another, normally it's a person that comes from funding or from a different kind of sector of filmmaking that will work together with a group of 4 teams. And they are dedicated to these 4 projects. But at the same time, these 4 projects are meeting a visual advisor. They are meeting experts that can help them also develop a strategy for their marketing, audience, and distribution, but always based on content. So it is extremely intense. What is important is that they are always together, lunches and dinners, so they also then exchange their feedback on the project. So every filmmaker needs not only to be able to accept feedback, but you need to also be generous and give feedback. And again, the feedback process is not one of you should do this and you should do that, because this is what makes a good film, but the feedback process goes more like this. Did you think about this? Can you answer this question? Have you ever thought about this character and how it could also be? Or when you put together filmmakers also from different cultures, and let's not forget that first and second time filmmakers very often rely on their life and experience and their country's culture to build this first feature, to think this first feature. So it could also be that a conversation among filmmakers goes, what do you want to say? What exactly do you mean? What are you trying to tell me? And how can this information come across in a more universal way? So what I'm just saying is that I am very happy that there is a lot of funding already and possibilities, but I think it is also very important to put in place advanced programs that can help people really challenge their ideas.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would actually concur with that. And I think these sort of master classes and conversations, whatever you want to call it, is very important for an arts practitioner's growth. But then everybody will have to be very open-minded, and they will have to accept criticisms, so that the conversation can be very genuine. So I just want to quickly ask Siva, you have something like that? Because in repayable finance, you might want to get all the art groups together to learn from each other, and to learn about the better lessons and worse ones. So how do you do that at Esther?
Yeah, so what we've done in the past is run an accelerator program, so similar to an incubator where you have a cohort of arts practitioners to which they delivered a taught program of content around investment, around what social impact monitoring and evaluation means, about using technology in their business. But the content doesn't really matter so much. I think the key thing is that you create a cohort that's maybe 10 to 15 organizations in size that allows the cohort to learn from one another. And the formal taught content is basically a structure to get people to talk to one another and learn from one another's experience. And I think that is really invaluable because experts, I think, can only teach so much, and particularly if they don't have the first-hand experience of what it's like to run those organizations. I think the entrepreneurs who lead the organizations are the experts on what they do. Sometimes they might need
peer learning is very important.
Yeah, I think peer learning is really key, and actually I think international peer learning is maybe even better. So how we facilitate sharing case studies from around the world. I'd be really interested to find out more about cultural enterprises in Hong Kong and what our UK-based cultural enterprises can learn from the experience and vice versa.
Right, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe the audience here can also chip in. I also have some ideas. Sabina, so in Venice, is the main language English, and has language been a problem when all these filmmakers from around the world get together? Do they all converse in English?
Yes. English is the language. Of course, there are people who know the language and who speak the language fluently, and people who have a little bit more difficulty. But again, this is part of the listening process, the coming together process, and it's never been an issue. Language has never been an issue. Of course, the film is then shot in their language. It's just the way we communicate in the workshop, but of course also in some cases the script then, and in the final stages, needs to be translated.
And what would be some of the testimonials from these younger people who attended? What do they find most rewarding? And particularly, for those who didn't really get the funding at the end, it's a pity, right? But what would they tell you, or what do you see in their sort of surveys and feedbacks?
Well, honestly, that is the most rewarding experience for us, because they do talk about the college as a life-changing experience in their work, and that they will bring this way of working into also their future projects. What we have is first, there's another element with the college that you really do build a community of filmmakers that will always know each other for the rest of their lives. They have gone through an experience that is, as they say, life-changing. So what happens is at that point, you have friends all over the world and can help you. They meet at festivals around the world. I see that there is now a community of college filmmakers that have kept in touch and that in some cases have also gone on to continue working together, because that is also a possibility on new ideas. But for the people that do not get the funds, that's the point. The experience is mainly, in some cases, they are also happy, because I'll give you an example. Some ideas might grow to need a bigger budget or more time. We are pushing films. We really, because we select what ideas that are still raw, that are still initial, it could be that in the process they become something different. They become something that needs more time, maybe just a little bit more of budget. And this has been the case. So I think one of the biggest successes is that we have funded 37 projects with 200,000 euros each. But there is another 38 that have been produced independently on budgets that they never go from being 200,000 to 1 million, but they might go to being 300, 400,000. Maybe some films have come out after 7 years. Still, I believe this is a success, because this project has then found a life. So, what they also say is that they acknowledge through this process how important it is to have some ideas, to challenge ideas. You do also learn how to listen carefully and to see what resonates and what doesn't in feedback. You do learn how to exchange ideas without being hurtful, without being judgmental. There is also a lot of things that in this process are learned, and because creativity is extremely linked to freedom of expression, if you go in there with judgment, if you go in there with yes and no, that of course will never enhance creativity. So I think what we build is also a way to see works of art and the work of others.
Right, thank you. I think it's very touching to hear that these people who go to the Biennale College, they don't give up. They might have to wait 7 years, but then they still produce and directed the film. It's never easy to be a creative person anywhere in the world. I would just like to add one more information, then I'll open up to the floor. It's in this sort of community building kind of scenario, I think Hong Kong is beginning to have some of that, and a private impact funding called MM2, responsible for the funding of 窄路微塵. They have got a small community of filmmakers together, but their budget is not terribly big, so they can't really support many films per year. But they do select the better scripts that come before them. And there's a bit of community building here. And also, in recent years, our local filmmakers, some of them go to Taiwan because of Golden Horse ceremonies. They also have an impact funding and also a Golden Horse Academy, 金馬學院, 金馬床頭. Right, so they go there and they also take classes, a little bit like the Biennale College. And although they might not get funding at the end from the impact funding at Golden Horse, they learn something and they come back to Hong Kong. So I think that's a very big area for all of us here to do something, to do more for these creative practitioners. Now let me see who would like to join in the conversation, and I think we have microphones, right? Can someone pass a microphone to Professor Long?
Yes. Thank you. I have a question. My question is how governments, especially Hong Kong governments, help art and culture. I'm thinking governments in general, they can help by policies and also incentive. On the policy side, I see the Korean government, at the beginning, they have this policy that all the cinemas have to show 30% of the shows must be Korean movies. This is how they help the Korean movie industry to start. This is the policy side. On the incentive side, in Hong Kong, Hong Kong government gave incentive to people who continue their education, help them with their subsidize their school fees. Can Hong Kong government, for example, give incentive to companies when it comes to, companies buying art and culture event tickets to their employees? This would help to fund the performance and event. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can talk about that. But let me allow more people to speak, and then I'll ask the speakers to have more holistic comments. Thank you. The gentleman at the front row, please. Maybe you want to share with us who you are, please.
My name is Alex Fong. I'm an entrepreneur. Also, I teach entrepreneurship in universities. I think starting from cultural entrepreneur, which is the finish arena, entrepreneurship is a mindset. And I'd like to learn from Sergio how your organization actually moved from grant mindset to the business plan mindset, as you said. Right? Do you, for example, incorporate people who are entrepreneurs into your organization setup so that when they vet the applications, they are not just vetting from a traditional grant mindset, but an entrepreneur mindset? So that's the question for you. And the question for Sabina. Yours is primarily a private sector organization, right? Or the government has anything to do with your college? So that's a question for you, yes.
Sabina, please, do you want to answer?
Yes, no, the organization is totally public. So here we have the Italian government funding the Biennale. Of course, there is a part, because the Biennale is, it is absolutely government funded, but of course there are a lot of revenues coming from tickets. You imagine for the Venice Film Festival, and also there is sponsors, but most of the funding for the college comes from the Ministry of Culture.
Yes, the Biennale, in Venice is very famous. There's the Art Biennale, that's every 2 years. There's the Film Festival as well. So a lot of people go to Venice because of these art events. Right, so thank you to the two gentlemen. Siva, you want to respond quickly?
Sure, yeah. So on the enterprise entrepreneurialism point, I think in our experience, the kinds of organizations that apply to our funds for funding tend to have that entrepreneurial mindset in the first place. So the leaders of those organizations tend to be quite entrepreneurial people that operate within the social enterprise context. There's still, though, I think for us as the intermediaries, ambassadors for impact investment in the space, there's a function around promoting entrepreneurship and the idea of entrepreneurship in what's sometimes quite a conservative sector that is very focused on project grants. And I think that promotion is all about highlighting and explaining what the opportunities around investment are, actually setting aside investment, why the enterprising mindset is helpful, I think, in a lot of cases. And I think it's helpful because by being enterprising, you're always looking for how can I achieve more impact? How can I become more resilient and sustainable? Or how can I do more? And it's a mindset that I think is always looking for new opportunities and is taking calculated risks. And I think, as I say, in the arts and culture sector, in the traditional side of the arts and culture sector, there's maybe sort of a deficit of that, as well as in the wider charity sector. So I'm interested in ways that we can promote that. And I think, again, case studies and peer learning is also an important aspect of that, because it shows that if someone else who's like me, a fellow arts leader, can do this or has done this, has taken this risk and it's maybe paid off, maybe it's interesting, then maybe I can do the same.
Siwa, you want to give this example of, what is it, Pipeline Factory that you talked to me about. So there's this art group, they were staying in an old sort of historic building, and like Hong Kong, the developer came in and said, we want to demolish the building, so you have to go out. And this art group said, no, I want to buy the building. And so, and then Nestor came in. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the organisation is called Friends of the Pipe Factory. The building in question is a former clay pipe factory. So in the 19th century, they used to make clay smoking pipes in this building. It's a beautiful old industrial building in the east end of Glasgow in Scotland. And it was kind of, it had 5 floors, most of which were empty. One of the floors was leased out to an arts organisation that subdivided the floor into studio spaces for young artists coming out of Glasgow Art School. The artists fell in love with the building. They would often host kind of exhibitions of their work there. But when the opportunity, when the landlord decided to sell the building, they became concerned that, this is going to go to a private developer, they're going to turn it into flats, we won't have a space anymore. So they got together, very quickly pulled together a clear business plan around their vision for the building, which involved, if they were to successfully buy the building, it would then fundraise for grants to renovate it, make all of the 5 floors fit for use. They would have an event space, they would have art studios, as well as office space that they would rent out to other social enterprise organisations. They had a really strong management team in place that managed to persuade me, actually, in the first instance. I then had to create an investment proposal that went to our investment committee and approved the deal. But crucially, this is an organisation that couldn't have been funded through mainstream means, because for traditional banks, this is too risky. They have very limited trading track record. And not only was it just a question of buying the building, it's also a question of them fundraising significant sums. We're talking like nearly £2 million worth to fit out the building. So there's actually significant uncertainty and a significant delay in acquiring the building and actually getting it fully utilised and generating the income that it needs to generate to really pay all of its debts. So for us, it's a big risk. And the idea is that in 5 years' time, once they've successfully fundraised and they've done the work, they will then be able to get a mortgage from a traditional lender, and they'll use that mortgage to refinance our money. So we haven't really talked much about impact. The impact there is that this will be a community space, so it will be open for use to local residents and local art groups. One of the organisations that's working with the core leading organisations project works with young people through creativity, and it works with sort of vulnerable young people in the local area and encourages them to engage with creative practice, so drawing, writing, to essentially get them off the streets and develop their opportunities.
This really sounds like something that Hong Kong should experience, but I'm quite sure that it's so difficult. I can imagine that this is actually a very good integration of social impact, social enterprises, and also with art organizations, and using the space to create a community and to do good. Okay, we have a couple more minutes. I want to see who else would like to have some comments and questions or feedback.
Can I go back to
Yes.
Paul's point about the government's role? I think from our experience, the government can play a convening role, and that's, I think, often underappreciated. So the ability to bring people together from different sectors. I think if the government is doing its job well, it should have a bird's eye view of the sector and knows who all the players are. I think we increasingly live in a more complicated, complex world where there's so many different agencies, so many different people doing kind of similar things, but sometimes quite different. And it's difficult when you're down here to really understand what's going on. And I think government can, without any real cost other than someone's time, can really sort of do an audit of who's relevant in the sector, how can we bring them together. I think that's a really valuable point. And I think, again, the use of grant capital to take a risk effectively to crowd in additional money, I think is a really powerful intervention.
And I would like to add that for Professor Wong, I think Hong Kong has to move forward. We need the corporate sector to understand that arts and culture is not just for entertainment, but it is possible that art and culture can bring in a lot of social impact. It can empower people who are disadvantaged, and it can really create a lot of passion for people to be involved and to participate in the community. And so I do believe that this is something the corporate sector should learn about. And I'm happy that, for example, the stock exchange has now funding to support social enterprises, also with creative directions and goals and profiles. And but we need to understand arts and culture, what it is. And so then the next step is that how could we create better art and culture organizations for Hong Kong? And then the third is how could we finance them in a way so that they can think bigger and they can realize their dreams. So it's one step and one step forward, because we need these organizations, because we are an East meets West Center for Cultural Exchange under our national, the 14th five-year plan. And so it's all very important. Now, let me have a final round. Please raise your hand if you want to speak. I hope more people can speak. Okay, we have right here. Any more here? Okay, please. Can you please also introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for the wonderful sharing today. My name is Linda. I represent SES. We're like a small service that helps funding, writing proposals for funding, for both public and private funding. And then, so we just wonder, there are an abundance of public funding in Hong Kong, actually very impressive at an international scale. But then we do feel that the art and culture sector desperately needs more support and resources from the private sector. But we are also aware that macro, the economic situation is really not doing so well. So I wonder if all three speakers, if you have any views or ideas to share about we are sort of in the downtime of the economy. How do we appeal to private funders to motivate them apart from their personal love of art and culture? What would there be any ways that we can appeal to them better so that they would be more willing to support the art and cultural development?
Yeah, that's a great question to end. But before that, I would like to see who else would like to have further comments. Yeah, I see a hand.
I think also adding to the economic issues, as an artist myself as well, but also with a full-time job, because that's most likely what a lot of people do. I know people who do art cannot really sustain themselves without a full-time job. And I also joined many programs, and my friends as well, and they have built extremely good capabilities, and they're really great musicians. They have the opportunities to showcase themselves, but in the end, the market, the price is it's not there, and it's really hard to sustain themselves. And how can they not just rely on funding and opportunities and actually make it a sustainable and generative lifestyle? Yeah.
Right, yeah, thank you for that sharing. Anybody else? Yes, okay. We suddenly have a few people. Xiu Yu.
I want to share how the audience. There's a few film in Hong Kong now is very good, but the price and the audience is less, and we can fund the ticket, but will they go? Will they enjoy the cultural life? So I want to say is it's not just money. Just how about the audience? Will they go there? West Kowloon is also say there's no more audience go there. How can we cultivate this culture and we have a cultural life in our Hong Kong? Yeah.
Okay, so we're going bigger and bigger. So I think there's another hand in front. The lady, first row, please. Here, first row. First row. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to speak? Yeah, please speak first. Sorry, I didn't see you.
So I would like to ask if the speakers feel frustrated sometimes because in Hong Kong, all the creatives, talents in Hong Kong, or individuals who are working professionally in the creative industries often find it very difficult to find a benchmark and standards for us to share in order to measure the impacts. Like to ask the investors and stakeholders to gain confidence, or more universally, we have some benchmarks and standards to draw and attract more people to support arts and culture. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have the last comment from the lady here.
Hello, my name is Irene Lau. I'm the chairman of the Central and Western District Association for Culture and Arts. So in this aspect, I can just find that besides calling for fundings, because we got some support from the government, but mainly I think is we need to groom the audience besides those people who is willing to invest, those corporations. But in terms of the government can do some more on the community levels, because there are different district associations in different districts. So we help those young artists to have a platform, but even they have a lot of art-related stuff, we are lacking audience. So if we can just promote more audience to appreciate, have an overall culture about concerning art and culture, so more private sector, the government will invest, and all those artists get a platform to have their own dream being realized.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Which aspects of the questions would the speakers like to have a final word on. So, Stephen, you go first.
Sure. There's quite a lot there, and instead of trying to answer every single question individually, I'm going to mention two examples that I think cover many of these issues. So one thing I'm personally have been interested recently, this is completely unconnected to our work at Nesta, but I don't know if you're familiar, in many European countries, and a number of European countries, so France, Germany, Spain, Italy, there's an initiative called the Culture Pass. The Culture Pass is a voucher between €200 to €500, depending on the country, that's awarded to each young person on their 18th birthday. And they can spend that money freely as they wish on culture. So what's defined as culture and what they can spend their money on differs from country to country subtly. So in Germany, for example, it has to be local initiatives and local culture. So they can't spend their vouchers on Amazon or Netflix or anything like that. In France, they're a lot more liberal, but actually what they found is that kids are buying manga. That's really popular in France. I think what's relevant here is that that's an interesting use of effectively government subsidy or grant for the sector, because it encourages young people to take part in the art, culture, and increases their consumption. But also, maybe within that environment, arts organizations, you would hope that they would be encouraged to do something different to encourage young audiences to spend money on them. Because suddenly there's this new audience that has €200, €500 in their pockets, so I would be changing my programming to try and to capitalize on that. So I'm interested in developing a culture pass